Hi, I'm immigration attorney Karlene, and today we're going to talk about, can I apply for E-2 visa while in the United States? In this video, we're going to talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of applying for the E-2 visa while in the United States. So you're here in the United States and you're here with a B-2 visa, and you're thinking about changing your status from a B-2 visa to an E-2 visa. What should you do? Should I apply for my E-2 visa while I'm in the United States? Or should I go back to my country, my home country, and apply for the E-2 visa there? Today we're going to talk about that, and we're going to find out what are the advantages of applying for your visa here in the United States as opposed to applying for it in the embassy in your country. So if you're in the United States with E-2 visa, let's say a tourist visa, and you'd like to change your status to an E-2 visa, how long should you have to wait? Well, it's very important that you wait at least 3 months or after to change your status from a tourist visa to an E-2 visa. If you apply too early, you're going to give the impression to the USCIS that you came here for the E-2 visa, but you didn't tell the truth. You decided to come with a B-2 visa instead. So it's very important that you wait those 3 months. Now, you can do a change of status. You can apply for the E-2 visa here in the United States. But remember, if you apply here and you get approved, you will only get the visa for 2.5 to 3 years. A lot of people prefer to do that because they prefer not to deal with the embassy in their country. And a lot of people prefer to just stay here in the United States, purchase the business, change status into an E-2 visa, and then continue to renew the visa when it expires. They prefer to do that. Remember though, if you do that, you cannot travel. You're kind of landlocked in the United States. Some people prefer to have their visa done or processed in their country because they get a stamp in the passport. And if you get a stamp in the passport, you can travel back and forth. Now what happens if you're here in the United States, you get your E-2 visa, you get a paper saying that your E-2 visa has been approved, and you decide one day, you know what, I need to visit my family. I need to visit my mom, my dad. What do? Well, you can travel, but in order to return to the United States, you need to get that stamp in your passport. You cannot show up at the airport with just the approval. Here's my approval from the USCIS. I'm approved. No, you need to get that stamp in the passport. This means when you visit your country, you need to make an appointment with the American Embassy in your country. You need to bring the whole entire package of the application that was approved in the United States. You need to make an appointment with the embassy, and you need to get that visa stamped. Now, is it possible that you can have the visa approved here, and then you go to your country, you make an appointment with the American Embassy, and you get denied? Yes, it's possible. And people say, well, how is that possible? I was approved here. Why wasn't I approved by the embassy in my country? Nobody knows. But it happens. Maybe the embassy didn't like the way the business was running, or maybe the embassy wasn't convinced of something. So that's something that you have to consider, that just because you were approved here in the United States, that does not mean that the embassy is obligated to approve your visa in your country. Now, chances are that they will approve it because you were approved here, but it's not a guarantee that you will get approved in the United States. Now, if that happens, if you're approved here, you go to your country, you go to the embassy for them to stamp the visa in your passport, and you get denied, you can apply again. You can apply again, find out what was it that bothered or upset the officer there at the embassy, and try to resolve it, try to explain better, do a better interview. Sometimes people just don't interview very well, or they don't know how to explain the business to the embassy. So that's very important, that you know how to explain the business, you know how to talk about it, you know what your plans are, you know exactly what's going on in the business. That's very important. What happens if you're from a country that, let's say, it's not qualified to apply for an E-2 visa, but your spouse is? You can apply for the E-2 visa in the name of your spouse. Now, sometimes we have situations where one spouse really is the person who knows the company very well, who knows how to do everything in the company, but the spouse doesn't. But if you go to the embassy for an interview, the person who whose name is on the company is the one who's going to be interviewed. So it's very important that that person knows exactly, understands the company, understands how it works, and understands that they need to answer the questions, because the spouse, your spouse, who is not qualified to apply is not going to be in the interview with you. You're the one who's going to be in the interview. So if your name is just on the company, just to be on the company, but you don't understand how the company works, that's not going to help you. You need to understand how the company works in order for the American Embassy to grant that visa for you. Can I apply for an E-2 visa if I have a student visa? Yes, you can. If you're here with a student visa and you want to change it to a E-2 visa, an investor visa, you can do so. Many times students show that they got money from a family member or from the family. Sometimes students get money for their graduation as a graduation present, and then they're able to buy a company. And yes, they can buy the company and get an E-2 visa. I remember a client of ours who, upon graduation, her parents gave her enough money to buy a yogurt shop. And so that was her investment. And she was able to live in the United States legally and work with this E-2 visa. Because remember, with the F-1 visa, which is a student visa, you are not allowed to work. So after the expiration of the student visa, my client was able to work legally in the United States with an E-2 investment visa and continues to live in the United States perfectly happy with her investment. So this is important. So you can go from a B-2 visa, which is a visitor's visa, to an E-2 visa. You can go from a student visa to an E-2 visa. So yes, you can change status to an E-2 visa easily. Again, you just have to follow all the requirements that immigration asks for, and you'll be able to do your investment and live legally in the United States with your family. I am immigration attorney Karlene. I have 35 years of experience, and I'm here to help you. Follow us in our next video, and we will continue to give you information on the E-2 visa. The link to that video is in the screen above. If not, it's in the description below. Follow us.